Yesterday, we got to show you the new Ryzen 9 9950X 3D2 for the first time, as AMD lifted their embargo, allowing us to release all of our testing data, which is a normal procedure for a new product release. However, while everything seemed pretty normal on our side, we quickly learnt as reviews went live, or rather didn't, that this was anything but normal. Normally with these new product releases, you can expect to see reviews from countless tech reviewers, whether that be here on YouTube or on tech websites like TechSpot, who did get a review because I wrote it, but there were plenty that didn't get to cover the 9950X 3D2, and in fact, most didn't. Leading up to the release, I was aware that Gamers Nexus didn't have a sample, which is why I stepped in to help out, but at the time I didn't really know what was going on there. I just knew for whatever reason, G and Steve didn't have a sample, despite the fact that they were very much interested in providing coverage, but more on that story in a moment. Now, as the reviews started to go live last night, I was shocked by the lack of coverage. Sure, the 9950X 3D2 is hardly the most exciting CPU AMD's ever released, but as a new flagship, a sort of dumb Halo product, it's kind of a big deal, and it is technically the best CPU that you can get on the AM5 platform now. It's also a part that enthusiasts have been requesting for years now, but AMD refused to release it because they knew it didn't really make sense, but then went on to release it anyway. So I guess you could say it was fan service, though they didn't exactly do anyone any favors with the price, but I digress, like Jay's 2 cents, or how he would if he got a sample. The point is, though, you'd think a CPU that really only makes sense for die-hard enthusiasts, that AMD would want to get as many of them in the hands of tech reviewers as they could, because they're kind of die-hard enthusiasts, but apparently not. And as I've said countless times in the past, I've stopped trying to make AMD make sense. But to put all of this into context, just 4 English-spoken YouTube channels that I'm aware of received a review sample. And when I say English spoken, I am including myself and DeBauer in that, so there's not many of us. And then when it comes to tech websites, there was less than a dozen globally. I counted 10. Not sure if it's exactly 10, but ballpark. It's somewhere around that figure. So it is an exclusive club. But thankfully, you don't need to be part of an exclusive club to enjoy today's sponsor. Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duranaut high-performance thermal paste. Duranaut offers extreme long-term stability combined with outstanding thermal conductivity, and this has been achieved through a specially engineered silicon oil combined with aluminium microparticles and zinc oxide nanoparticles of various shapes. Duranaut isn't electrically conductive and won't harden over time. For best performance, you'll want to apply a very thin layer, and to help with this, included is the TG Spatula Pro. The spatula's revised design allows for increased pressure during application, making it easy to spread a thin, even layer of Duranaut. So for more information, please check the link in the video description. Okay, so after reviews went live, or most of them didn't end up going live, we started to realize just how exclusive the 9950X 3D2 sampling program was. Well-respected and long-standing websites such as Computer Base, Hardware Lux, Igor's Lab, and even Tech PowerUp didn't get a sample, and that's just to name a few. Even more shocking was the YouTube side of things. Linus Tech Tips, with 16.8 million subscribers and their own private jet, they didn't even get a sample. I mean, what the hell, AMD? You didn't even need to pay for shipping. Linus could have just jetted over there and picked it up himself. I don't even have a private jet, and somehow I got one, so make that make sense. As I noted earlier, Jay's 2 cents wasn't able to give his 2 cents on the 9950X 3D2. AMD left him out. Hardware Canucks, they were also ignored. And Paul from Paul's Hardware was left out, which is insane.
Excellent!
If you're not going to sample Paul, what the hell are you doing? Paul's the man. And there were countless more popular and well-respected channels who missed out. I can't really name them all. There's so many of them these days. And, of course, amongst them was Gamers Nexus. Now, as I said, prior to reviews going live, I had no idea just how few reviewers were actually getting sampled. But I did know for a fact that Gamers Nexus had been shunned. G and Steve reached out to me privately a week before reviews were set to go live, asking if I had a sample. He then informed me that they didn't have a sample and they weren't getting one, And at that point in time, they were just trying to learn why that was, why AMD decided not to send them a sample, one of the largest and most trusted PC tech channels, a review sample. That last little bit was my words. G and Steve didn't say that they were the most respected and largest. This Steve saying that. Anyway, we had a bit of a chat about the situation, but at that point, we really had no idea what was going on. And realizing that I was almost done with my testing, or at the very least, I could cut some of the testing I had planned on doing, just cut that out and get the CPU over to Steve, help them out. So I offered to express ship him my sample so they could get a review out, even if it was like a day or two late. And Steve was really grateful for that offer. So later that day, I waved my 9950X3D2 goodbye. Safe travels, little guy. By this point, though, Gamers Nexus was pretty convinced that they had been blacklisted by AMD. And from my perspective, it did certainly look that way. I couldn't imagine a world where it made sense not to sample GN. Gamers Nexus had also fallen out of contact with AMD, having been referred to a third-party marketing team. So it did appear as though GN had been downgraded by AMD from a Tier 1 reviewer to a Tier few reviewer. But as we've since learnt, maybe, just maybe, that's not actually the case, as Gamers Nexus were far from the only media outlet that was ignored for this release. And as I just noted, they were in pretty good company. And not only that, but we don't really speak directly with AMD these days either, primarily dealing with a local Australian PR firm for sampling and, well, most other inquiries. Therefore, at this point in time, I'm not yet convinced that Gamers Nexus has been blacklisted, and it is difficult to prove at this point in time. If they miss out on the next product release, then yeah, it's pretty safe to say they have been, but for now, they find themselves in the same situation as most reviewers. And speaking of which, we do know that most reviewers didn't get a 9950X3D2 sample, so I guess the next question is, how the hell did we? A rinky-dinky tech channel located off-screen in a region some people don't even believe exists. Unfortunately, I can't really answer that question, as that would require understanding how AMD works, and I probably have a better chance of unlocking the mysteries of the human brain, which, now that I think about it, that's probably required to understand why AMD's marketing team does many of the things that it does. Now, don't get me wrong, I very much appreciate AMD sending me a 9950X3D2 sample so I can let you guys know not to buy it, but how did I manage to get one in the first place? Well, sort of a funny story. They just sent it to me. A team member from the PR company that I spoke of earlier that represents AMD here in Australia, they emailed me 4 weeks prior to the release asking if I agreed to the 9950X3D2 embargo, which of course I did. This is all very normal for receiving a product prior to public release. As part of this embargo, I wasn't allowed to publicly confirm that I have or will receive a sample. I wasn't allowed to post any pictures or do any unboxings of the sample once it was received, and in no way was I able to publicly disclose information about the sampling process until the embargo date and time expired. Again, this is all very normal stuff, nothing unusual. Along with the 9950X3D2, I received a full review kit, including 32GB of DDR5 6000 CL28 memory, an AMD X870E motherboard, a cooler, and an SSD. This all landed on my desk 3 weeks before the reviews were set to go live, so thankfully I did have plenty of time to do my testing, and thankfully I did jump on it fairly quickly, as that allowed me to send it on to Gamers Nexus a week before the reviews were scheduled to go live. But that's the extent of it. I never even requested a 9950X3D2 sample. I didn't send a single email inquiring about the CPU or review samples, and in all honesty, didn't really seem like a super interesting release to me. And after how low interest from our audience was for the 9850X3D, I really wasn't that excited to sink a heap of time and energy into covering another CPU that really doesn't need to exist. Now, I've done quite a bit of reading around the internet to try and understand why AMD has handled this product release in the way they have. I've seen some people theorizing that AMD is positioning the 9950X3D2 as a workstation chip, not a gaming chip. So by skipping traditional gaming reviews, AMD hopes to avoid headline benchmark showing the $900 chip losing to the cheaper 7800X3D or 9800X3D in gaming. But That theory doesn't really check out given we were one of the few reviewers to receive a sample, and we might as well be called Gamers Nexus at this point in time because we primarily focus on gaming benchmarks. Others claimed that the 9950X 3D2 is a niche Halo product. It's roughly $300 more than the standard 9950X 3D for a performance uplift that averages only 4 to 7% in productivity workloads. AMD likely knew the value score in most reviews would be poor, but again, we heavily focus on value for most product reviews here at Hardware Unboxed, and in fact, we did include a value analysis of the 9950X 3D2 covering both gaming and productivity workloads, concluding that it offered horrifically poor value. We've also read reports claiming that AMD was unusually aggressive with retail channels, issuing strict instructions to retailers not to sell or even loan units to media members before the launch. This prevented reviewers from simply buying one at the store to get a review out on time. That effectively delayed critical reviews. I've already reached out to some of the local retailers here regarding the 9950X 3D2, the availability, and to see if they were contacted by AMD and if any weirdness was going on. On the availability side of things, I was told there is loads of 9950X 3D2s to buy, so plenty of stock, and they've had the stock for a while now. So this wasn't some last-minute rushed thing or some kind of weird supply issue. It's certainly not a paper launch. There will be plenty of them. So if you want to buy one, which we don't recommend you do, but if you wanted to, then you'll be able to. So plenty of stock, and therefore there should have been plenty for review samples. AMD's got a healthy supply of these things. So yeah, they could have sampled the reviewers as they normally do. The retailers I spoke with also received no specific instructions from AMD about sampling reviewers, but this is really normal. I imagine if a retailer here in Australia did reach out to AMD for permission to sample a reviewer, such as ourselves, if we didn't get a sample, then AMD would have said no, and this is based on what happened with Hardware Lux and Computer Base. Both were denied samples from retailers that they regularly deal with. At the very least, in my opinion, AMD has poisoned the well with this strategy. And like I said, while I appreciate them providing us with a sample, had I known we were one of the few media outlets receiving a sample, I might not have provided a review. Or at the very least, I would have been, well, it would have been nice to know that this wasn't a normal review program. I guess what I'm saying is, I would have been torn between wanting to warn you guys, provide consumers with information about what the 9950X 3D2 was, but I also wouldn't have wanted to take advantage of an unfair situation where other reviewers were forced to miss out on the ability to provide their own coverage and do what it is that they do. It's really not unlike the situation we found ourselves in back in 2020 when Nvidia blacklisted us, Hardware Unboxed, for refusing to change our editorial direction. They're the words they used, because we refused to push their ray tracing and DLSS narratives. The decision by Nvidia caused a trust issue with viewers, and it called into question the independence of reviewers who did receive samples and covered those technologies. This move by AMD creates a very similar situation where it certainly does look like only a small group of reviewers had been vetted for the 9950X 3D2 release in an effort to control the narrative. And some people certainly will believe that we were provided a sample because we would ensure a positive review, or that AMD could manipulate our review, which, look, that's a bit of an odd take in my opinion, given we were one of the most, if not the most, critical of AMD's Zen 5 release, and that's just one example of the criticism we've directed towards AMD over just the last year or so. But even so, it absolutely does create this questionable environment where you have to ask the question, why were we sampled and others weren't? Why did AMD pick us to showcase the 9950X 3D2? Were we even supposed to be sampled, or was it some kind of mistake? I can't answer these questions, and AMD would simply say, look, review samples were limited, so we spread them around as best as we could. But we know availability is really strong for this product, so it was absolutely a choice made by AMD to selectively choose reviewers, and it's a choice that we don't agree with. But anyway, that's really all I have to say on this one, so if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, Subscribe for more content, and that's pretty much it. We have the join button or Patreon. If you want to get more Hardware Unboxed goodness and support what we do here, you can sign up to either one of those things. You'll get access to our exclusive Discord server where we can talk about this stuff more directly with you. We have live streams for members, behind the scenes content, Q&A stuff, a lot of cool things there, so check it out if you're interested. But if not, it's perfectly fine. And I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.